Hey, how much assets does your dad have? What? Why all of a sudden? Didn't he retire last year too? I was just thinking about his retirement funds and if he might be worried about it. Are you thinking about managing my dad's assets through your bank? I've been thinking about his future too. Maybe it'd be better to increase his retirement funds. Our bank offers various services like investment trusts and foreign currency deposits. Even if you say that, I don't really know much about it. Your father worked for a big corporation, and he must have received a decent retirement bonus. Plus, that house and land, they must be worth quite a lot. Jason said, his eyes sparkling. Seeing that look on his face made me feel like he was more interested in getting his hands on the assets rather than genuinely increasing my father's wealth. I am Sandra Parker, a 35-year-old part-time homemaker with no children yet. I am too busy with work to even think about children, but being 35, I have thought about taking it seriously. Hey, this is amazing. What? The land of your family home, it's worth a lot. The area has been developing, and land prices are skyrocketing. You looked that up? It's important, isn't it? It might be better to sell it now and buy an apartment somewhere else. Why are you getting ahead of yourself? That's for my parents to decide, not us. If you suggest it, your father and mother might get interested. My family home belongs to my father and mother, whatever it's worth, it's none of our business. Plus, it's the house I grew up in and have many memories and attachments to. It's very reassuring to know that such a family home exists. There's no way I would talk to my parents about selling it and moving somewhere else. Of course, if they decide to sell it and want to live somewhere else, I'd be a little sad but wouldn't oppose it. In fact, I don't think I'm in a position to either oppose or support it. Moreover, the money from the sale would belong to my parents, and we have no right to it. I don't understand why my husband can't see that. Recently, I'm frankly fed up with my husband who keeps talking about such things. Perhaps his sales performance has been dropping, and he's desperately eyeing my family's assets. My husband works in the sales department of a major bank. My in-laws run a small dried goods store in a rural area. They are not bad people, but they are somewhat proud that their only son is an elite banker. It's lucky for you to marry an elite banker like my son. I was told when we went to greet them prior to the wedding, but I just smiled and nodded. My husband hated country life and moved to the city to attend university. He graduated from a fairly well-known university and worked at a well-known city bank. Before we got married, he didn't brag much about it, but after 2 or 3 years of marriage, he often said, "You're lucky, you know. A mere clerk at a small company, married to an elite banker like me. You can brag about it to your friends, huh?" Even if my husband is very capable and indeed an elite, boasting to friends about it would just be showing off. But well, as long as he says it at home, it's harmless, and if it makes him feel better about his job, I thought I might as well boost his ego. Men in their 30s, working in such environments, often have a tough time dealing with both higher-ups and subordinates. So, even though I internally thought, "What the heck is that about?" I went along with it appropriately. Really, I'm glad I could marry you. Saying this keeps my husband in a good mood, and it's much better than contradicting him and creating a hostile atmosphere. Now I think maybe that thought has made my husband a bit too arrogant. I graduated from the economics department of a university and joined a company that manufactures and sells electronic components. It's not a major corporation, but it's a fairly well-known company that has contracts with major electronics manufacturers and has several sales offices nationwide. I work in the accounting department there. My husband's bank and my company have a business relationship, and he often visited my company for sales purposes, which is how we naturally started talking and eventually began dating. I thought he was a bit too confident, but I have always been told I am too serious or too rigid, so maybe someone like him was just right for me. From my school days, I was focused on studying, and even at university, while I did discuss with male classmates, it never developed into dating. So, he was my first boyfriend. I probably wasn't very experienced with men. Looking back, I think he might have exaggerated his boasts, but to me, it sounded like a joke. Thus, after dating for a year and a half, we decided to get married. I never had the concept of quitting my job after marriage, and during our dating period, I talked about continuing to work, so there was no discussion about quitting or not, and I just continued working normally. We visit my in-laws once or twice a year, about which they never say much. My husband says, "I'm busy with work." And they seem to be satisfied with that. It can't be helped, he's an elite banker. My mother-in-law says, "Actually, I've been getting busier too, so it's helpful for me." Then, 7 years into our marriage, my mother unusually called me at work one day. The moment the phone rang, I had a bad feeling, a premonition. "Hello, Sandra. My husband has. My father passed away suddenly." It was truly unexpected. That day, my parents had gone shopping together in the morning, had lunch outside, and returned home. My father said he felt sleepy and would take a nap in the bedroom. It was unusual for him to say that, so it felt odd, but my mother was busy with household chores. About 2 hours later, thinking of having dessert together, she went to the bedroom to wake him up, but found him lifeless. She called an ambulance immediately, but the paramedics said he was already breathless at the scene. Despite efforts at the hospital, his consciousness did not return, and they declared him deceased. Yet, my mother managed the funeral arrangements efficiently, contacting father's friends and colleagues from the company he had worked at until the previous year. She was so busy that it worried me. But perhaps she needed to stay active to keep her composure. If only I had gone to the bedroom sooner, why didn't I find his unusual behavior suspicious? These regrets were swirling in my mother's heart, I could tell. Watching her go through this, and the sudden loss of my father, was unbearably painful. Still, we managed to get through my father's funeral smoothly. But the real sorrow would come later. Especially for my mother, I worried if she would be all right. My parents had always seemed like such a loving couple, enviable even from a daughter's perspective. Busy times might distract her, but once things settled down after the funeral, the sorrow would surely overwhelm her. At the time, I too had work responsibilities I couldn't leave for long. Then my aunt, my father's sister, said she would stay with my mother, so I asked her to. My aunt and mother had been close since high school and got along very well. My aunt is a straightforward and caring person, and my mother often relied on her. I left things in my aunt's hands and stepped back. The day after the funeral, my husband said something outrageous. "Now that your father has passed, that means we can sell that house, right?" "Huh? What are you talking about?" "Well, you're inheriting it, right? It's yours, isn't it?" My mother is still there. "It's not just me to inherit. That house is too big for just your mother. Just sell it and put her in a nursing home or something. She'll make friends there and won't be lonely. Don't say stupid things." How can she even think about that now? My father's funeral was just yesterday. What, you can't mean? What? You're not thinking of renouncing the inheritance, are you? What if I am? I haven't thought about that yet, but I think it might be okay. My mother has been busy and looks very worn out. Does this person not realize it's not the time for such discussions? No way. I won't allow that. Listen, I'm going to be clear about this. What are you talking about? Your father's estate is mine. If you don't like it, let's divorce. Jason said with a smug look. What is with this overconfident face? How can he confidently say that the inheritance I receive is his? I don't understand at all. Moreover, suggesting divorce as if I would hand everything over to him if I wanted to avoid it. Where does this confidence, or rather this arrogance, come from? Basically, the property a wife inherits from her parents doesn't become her husband's property. Even a bank employee should understand that much. I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you please stop saying such nonsense? Do you think I'm not serious? Serious or not, my father's estate has nothing to do with you, I said, and Jason stormed out. Maybe he was angry because things didn't go his way, but I don't care anymore. To say such a thing so casually, bragging about being an elite is on a whole different level. At such a time, I can't imagine continuing to live with someone who says such inconsiderate things. As I was pondering what to do, about 20 minutes later, Jason came back and put a divorce paper in front of me, already signed by him. Perhaps he went to get it just now. He must think he doesn't need a wife who won't do as he wishes. Well, that makes things quicker. See? Now you understand I'm serious. Yeah, I got it. Well, that's straightforward. You should have been like this from the start. Jason nodded with satisfaction at my response and went into another room. He was strangely smirking that night, and I briefly wondered if he was thinking about something different than I was, but I didn't touch on that topic and just let the evening pass. The next day, when Jason went to work, I quickly packed my personal belongings and went back to my parents' house. I explained the situation to my mother and aunt, and submitted it immediately, then headed to the bank where Jason worked. Usually out for sales, Jason was unusually inside the bank that day. Well, that was convenient. When he saw my face, he smirked. I acted as if nothing was wrong and went to the counter, smiling brightly. I'd like to cancel all the accounts our company has with your bank. What? Since Jason was watching, I made sure he could hear it too. He panicked and rushed over to me. Hey, what are you saying? Don't joke around, this is my workplace. You're not making any sense. I know what I'm doing. We're getting a divorce, so I thought I'd withdraw all the accounts. What? Probably, he was not expecting that answer. He must have been absolutely sure I would never go through with a divorce. From my point of view, I wonder if there's any woman who wouldn't divorce after being told such things. Between the divorce and canceling the accounts, Jason was probably panicking by now. What do you mean, we're getting a divorce? Well, you said it. If I didn't like handing over my father's estate, we should get divorced. So I didn't like it, and I just filed those divorce papers. Wait, that was a joke, right? No one actually files for divorce over something like that. Jason, you signed the divorce papers yourself and shoved them at me. Jason looked dumbfounded for a moment. What is there to be confused about? He handed me the divorce papers himself. What did he think, that I wouldn't actually file them? Did he think I was just a woman who would do whatever he said, seriously underestimating me? Although I was listening to his bragging and casually praising him, maybe he thought I was seriously praising him. No way, I was just reading the script, so he should be able to tell that there was no real emotion in it. Why? I don't get it at all? Well, obviously it's divorce then. Huh? Seriously? Divorce and account cancellation? Why? Who would stay married and hand over the parents' estate to the husband? Here is one, right? Hell, no. I was so angry that I couldn't help but speak harshly. What would I do if my dignity was doubted? Really, I just want him to give me a break. But you can't live without me, right? Excuse me? Really, did he actually believe that? I can't believe this foolish husband. He really overdid it. To you, I'm your proud husband. You're totally in love with me and don't want to leave me, right? I was at a loss for words at his statement. Isn't it embarrassing to say such things without shame? What is going on inside his head? I'm just astonished. Oh no. I couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. Anyway, the divorce papers have been filed, so you and I will be strangers in several months. Just make sure the account cancellation is processed properly. No future dealings with a bank that employs someone like you. Wait. What are you saying? Even if we get divorced, the company's account has nothing to do with it. You're just an accounting clerk. What right do you have to say such things? Oh, right. I hadn't mentioned it. I do the accounting, but I just became the president of the company. What? I hadn't told my husband something. The company I worked for was originally started by my mother's father, my grandfather. I joined my grandfather's company with the intention of taking it over from the start. I didn't assume I would naturally take over just because I was the grandchild, and I didn't want others to think so either. That's why I hid the fact that I was the granddaughter and just got a job and worked hard like everyone else. I kept it hidden partly because there was another reason why I hadn't told my husband about it. My grandparents had divorced when my mother was a child. My mother was raised by my grandmother. The reason for their divorce was that my grandfather, who had just started the company, was always busy and irritable, often taking it out on my grandmother. Eventually, their feelings drifted apart, leading to divorce. For my mother, the memories of my grandfather were always of him yelling, a frightening presence, so she rarely wanted to see him. Hearing this, I became a bit curious about what kind of person he was, and I decided to meet him when I entered high school. My first impression of my grandfather was completely different from what I had heard. He seemed very calm. He appeared strict yet kind. It seemed he had long regretted being too absorbed in his work and neglecting his family. Since the family had fallen apart because of him, he couldn't bring himself to contact us, and he was very happy when I visited him. I often heard stories about managing the company from my grandfather, which gradually sparked my interest in business management. After graduating from university, I joined my grandfather's company without hesitation, and my mother didn't object. At my wedding, my grandfather and my mother reunited, holding hands and crying. When I joined the company, my grandfather was already 72 years old and had stepped down as president to become the chairman, with the managing director who had supported him taking over as president. However, that president fell ill 3 years ago. Fortunately, it wasn't serious, but since then, I had been supporting, or rather being supported by, the president while doing accounting and becoming involved in running the company. And just last month, I became the president. My father was very happy about it. I hadn't made it public yet because I wanted to wait until all the internal transitions were complete. Wait a minute. You're the president? I'm hearing this for the first time. Are you kidding? It's true, well, although it's just a medium-sized company with an annual turnover of about $100 million, as you always say. You're the president and the chairman's granddaughter? Why didn't you say that earlier? That changes everything. What changes? Then, even if you don't inherit your father's estate, I won't divorce you. What kind of reasoning is that? Doesn't he listen to people at all? I already said I had filed for divorce, which means we would be divorced in several months. How can he not understand that, and yet he calls himself an elite banker? That reminded me again of what my grandfather had said. Men often lose their drive or become servile when they think their wives have money. It's best not to tell your husband about you becoming president until it becomes publicly undeniable. Just as I was reflecting on this, the branch manager came over looking pale. Excuse me. I hear that you are thinking about canceling all your accounts here. It seemed that a bank employee who had overheard our conversation had informed the branch manager. I'm sorry for the disturbance. Please proceed with the account cancellation process. For more details, please ask Mr. Parker here. Jason. What on earth is going on? Well, this is... There was no point in arguing here, so I left. Well, I had said what I needed to say, and I had plenty of other things to do. I couldn't stay here any longer. Changing banks is quite a hassle, but I couldn't continue dealing with a bank that employs such a man. Plus, I was planning to make various changes in the company, so it felt like a fresh start. As I was walking away, "Wait for me." "Oh no." Hearing a voice, I turned around to see my husband chasing after me, crying, and then he started apologizing there. I really wish he'd stop. People around us were looking at us as if something was happening. It was quite embarrassing. "Stop it, please. Please reconsider the divorce. Without you, I have no standing. Is his status more important than our divorce?" I felt like retorting, but I didn't even want to speak to him anymore. I just wanted to get away from this situation. That's none of my business. Please, it's not just about the account cancellation. My elite life is falling apart. I told you, I don't know. I ran away from my still pleading husband. I don't know why I had to run, but being faced with a man crying and apologizing in public was too much for me, given the curious stares. I guess I'm still not very brave. Afterward, my husband tried to contest the divorce, but it didn't go through. The divorce form unmistakably bore my husband's signature, written just the day before. His plea that he hadn't intended to divorce was not accepted. It was good I filed it immediately. If I had waited, there might have been a chance for him to claim he no longer intended to divorce. The bank transition went smoothly, and I publicly announced my presidency. My ex-husband was demoted because of this incident. Apparently, as I suspected, his sales performance had been declining, and he couldn't secure new clients, although he had boasted to others that he was about to land a big contract. He had been completely depending on my parents' assets. After our exchange at the bank, my ex-husband's schemes became widely known, and he was looked down upon at the bank. "It's your fault I lost my position. Take responsibility." He made such an absurd phone call, but I ignored it completely. Eventually, he couldn't withstand the cold treatment from those around him and left the bank. Now he is almost living reclusively at his parents' house, and recently my former mother-in-law called complaining. "It's embarrassing to the neighbors, I wish he would leave." To which I responded, "Spoiling him led to such selfishness, didn't it?" She was speechless. I haven't heard from her since. I am now fully engaged with my work. I don't have time to deal with my ex-husband. But soon, I'm looking forward to having a meal with my grandfather and mother. That's my greatest joy right now, and I plan to continue devoting myself even more to my work.